Our showcase of local collaborations, our panel this afternoon, will be facilitated by January Scott. As was mentioned earlier, she has served for 30 years in executive and management positions with national, state, and local child-serving organizations focused on the welfare and prevention services for children and families. She has served for the Kansas Children's Initiative Fund, Kansas Children's Service League, and Prevent Child Abuse America, located out of Chicago, Illinois. Ms. Scott is an expert in the field of contract management as related to shared classroom settings, and it's our pleasure to have her facilitate this afternoon. Our panel this afternoon is comprised of excellent Head Start grantees and their local education agency partners. Each of these panel members have long-standing relationships and have been asked to present today because of their unique experiences, which we feel everyone in attendance today can really benefit from hearing from. With that, I'd like to ask each individual on the panel to introduce themselves to the group, and January, I'll let you take it from there.
Do you want to start?
Sure. I don't know if you all can hear me. My name is Beverly Hooker, and I'm the Head Start Director from North Central Missouri College, Green Hills Head Start. We cover 9 counties in North Missouri.
I'm Sharon Young, and I'm the Disabilities Coordinator for Green Hills Head Start in Trenton.
I'm Kim Knight, and I'm a speech-language pathologist and the Early Childhood Special Education Coordinator for Putnam County R1 in Unionville, Missouri.
I'm Janet Gott. I'm Education Coordinator for North Central Missouri College, Green Hills Head Start.
I'm Mary Rook. I am the Title I Early Childhood Supervisor with Columbia Public Schools, collaborating with CMCA in Columbia.
I'm Lindsay Massey, and I work with CMCA Head Start in Columbia, and I work under the Education Disability.
Good afternoon. My name is Murnell King, and I'm with Central Missouri Community Action Head Start. I'm the Early Childhood Programs Director there. I have to acknowledge Melissa Chambers, who's sitting back there. I told her I was going to do it, and she didn't want me to, but Melissa waved. The very first year of the partnership we're going to talk about, Melissa was directly working with Mary. I was more in an administrative role, but I want to let you know that she did an awesome job. So.
Okay, great. The structure for this session is each local community collaboration will present their program in a 15-minute period of time, and then we will open it up for questions and answers. And I should clarify that each program has 15 minutes, so I didn't want you to feel like we were going to do them all in 15 minutes. So with that, Bev has offered to go first, so I will turn it over to you.
Okay. We realize that this is the killer time slot, so I'm the straight man of the team. Murnell's the bells and whistles. So. First of all, I would like to let you know that our program is really considered very rural, and our largest city/town/incorporated area would be somewhere around 8,000 to 10,000 people. So we cover 9 counties, I think I mentioned earlier. When Rodan contacted me and said, would really like for you to present, first of all, I basically told her, we like to fly below the radar in North Missouri. And is this really a good idea? And she convinced me that it was, so then I got to break the news to the rest of my team, and they were real excited. But I think as we go through our little presentation, I hope that what comes to the forefront is that yes, you have to have systems in place, and yes, you have to have understandings, but more importantly, you have to have a relationship, and you have to, it's all about people. It is all about people. And as those people change, as the players change, you basically start again, and communication is the key. We've decided to kind of go through in our mind, we've kind of picked a couple of kids in the Putnam County School District that is a Head Start child or two. And we're going to take you from the time that they enter into Head Start and then what each player does. And so in Putnam County, we lease our facility, our center is actually in public school facility. When they built that facility, they built it with Head Start in mind. So there was a lot of communication from the get-go. And it continues to be a good working relationship. Kim's been there how many years now? 7 years. I also got asked how we begin these relationships, and to be honest, I don't know. They were in place when I started, and but as I said, it continues. So as child enters into Head Start, Sharon, what do we do?
Well, in the summer, we administer the Denver 2 screening. We do health screenings in the summers in our 9-county area. If the Denver shows that the child has a suspect, then I go out and do my screenings, and then I will make a referral just as soon as I know there's a need. But along with that referral, I also send the public school a lot of information on our health screenings, any medical reports we have. What else do I send you?
Whatever's needed.
Whatever's needed, everything. I send everything I have. And I've been told it saves them up to 2 weeks, on there. So we share a lot of information with each other, which works really well. My referrals are reliable and reflect the need for services. She can vouch for that. I try to only refer as needed, so I will not overburden the public school system, because it's a lot of work for them, and I really try to be real careful on the referrals I make, that they're good referrals. So once I make the referral, then you tell me what you do.
Once she makes the referral, and she didn't mention either, Sharon's really good, as well as the teacher in the Head Start Center, about contacting me and letting me know that they've got some kiddos and who they are and what the concern is. When my school year starts, we're going from the very beginning. I do screenings. I'm the only SLP for the entire district, and so I see a lot of kids. And at the beginning of the school year, I do all of my regular screenings in the public school. So I'm pretty busy there in September, so to know what I've got coming up is a real help to me. But sometimes it causes a delay in the time that once I get the referral, how much time it takes me to get back over there to screen and make sure that those concerns are still there, and then to get that information out to parents. But once I do receive those referrals, as soon as I can get to the Head Start, I do my own screening. It's the Northeast Missouri Speech and Language Screening. It was accepted by several schools in the Northeast area, and that way when we have students that move from school to school, we have one screening that can follow them, so that the schools are aware of concerns that they might have. And so I take that screening over. Because Sharon has done her screenings generally in the summer, there's a few months that have lapsed there, as well as these students starting Head Start, and for the first time for most of them. And so that's a big deal. So if there were social concerns that showed up on the Denver, those may not be as big of a concern anymore, because now they've been around other children and they're starting to make some real good gains. And so those are important things for me to know too. So even though it does take me a little while to get over there, sometimes it's actually beneficial, because that gives the child a little bit of time to kind of get settled in. Once I do my screening, if those concerns are still there, I will then do what's called a notice of action and ask for parent permission in order to get permission for testing. Usually I contact the parent also. If I'm unable to contact the parent, I just can't get them on the phone or something, I will ask the Head Start teacher to either relay my message and explain what's going on, or to have them contact me. So, but I try to get a hold of the parent. It's a pretty scary thing to think of, you're getting this notice of all of a sudden that they want your kid tested, and it's the very first time they've ever been in school, and what's wrong with my child? And so I try to make that as easy as possible for parents, because it is a pretty scary thing. Once I receive permission from the parent, then I go in to the center while the child is there, and I do the testing. I think that just makes it easier for the children. They don't have to go to a different location. The parent doesn't have to make time in order to bring them to me, but I just go to them. And so I make time, I go there, I do the testing, and then once the testing is complete, I compile the results, compare it to the criterion that's given to me by DESE to see if they're going to qualify for services. Whether or not they qualify, I need to write an evaluation report and get together with the parent to go over those results. And so we do that. If they qualify for services, then we proceed on with creating an IEP and making goals for that student. And the whole way through, the Head Start teacher, teachers, and the parents are involved in those processes so that they feel a part of it. And and from there, once services start, I just go to the center for those. Generally, I will pull the children back into the office area / speech room, just so we can have some quiet time, especially if it's articulation related, so I can get some really good quiet time with them to work on where they need to put their tongue. Sometimes I do work with them in the big group, or they have a special event. I know at Christmas time, they always do gingerbread houses, and so I've gone over and had them tell me about their house, and we can work on speech and language things that way. But at certain times, it's really beneficial to have that one-on-one time that I can go in and really help with placement on the tongue and everything. So that's kind of how my services work with the kids.
Kim and Shelby have a really good working relationship. They communicate. I think every time Kim comes over to work with the child before and after, so that's very helpful for Shelby, our teacher. The way Shelby works with these children, she staffs each child, 4 to 5, 6 kids a week, and she works on the goals from the IEP. She works on specific goals and encourages the child in many different ways in the classroom. She works individually, and she works with that child in a group. She does a great job of working with that child with puppets. One activity they do is the child gets to use Chef Combo and gets up in front of the class and tells what they're going to have for breakfast, lunch, and snack. They also have different jobs, and the children have to get up, not have to, but they get up in front of the class and they might answer the question of the day. They're asked questions at free time, at meal time. They play language games such as lotto games, matching games. The children are asked a lot of who, what, and where questions during and after story time. The staff work really well together, and they repeat back to the child what they have said. And all of this goes on in the classroom, but Shelby also carries this over to the parent. Like Kim said, the parent is involved from the beginning, but Shelby encourages these parents and reminds them to also read to that child. They have reading logs. She encourages them to ask those children questions before, during, and after the stories. She encourages the parent to repeat back to the child what they've said. It's just an ongoing process between Sharon, Kim, parents, staff, and the center.
Yes, you've really reinforced that, how it really works when we get down to that level. Yeah.
And I would like to say, Bev had mentioned we were going to use a couple of kids as scenarios. One little boy that they're working with, when he first came to us in August and September, I couldn't understand a word he said. In fact, we kind of thought that he had his own language. It was just, you just couldn't understand what he was saying. And the other day I was up there and I sat down by him and he said, "Making a snowman." And I said, "I love your snowman." And he said, I'm going to put a coat on him. And he drew a coat. And he said, I'm going to put a zipper on that coat. And, you know, it's just amazing the progress this child has made. I was overwhelmed. It was just amazing.
What a great way to end the story. Thank you, thank you. Okay, Murnell, why don't we go with you?
Well, I'll get out the little hymnal and all the notes. But we're going to do ours a little bit differently because Central Missouri Community Action has several school district partnerships where we're actually co-located. This was the first one, and we're going to talk at length about it. And then we have one, we're just telling you this, so if you want to talk to us about any of these, that's fine. We have one in Ladonia, Missouri, which is very rural. We're literally in the middle of a cornfield. The peer review is really interesting there. But it really is, and that's an MPP Head Start classroom. And then we have one in Jefferson City. This is our first year of operation, and it's for 2 classrooms of infants and toddlers because they told us that their assessment in their school district showed 70 children, teen parents. So we didn't even try to talk about the 3 to 5s. We were going to go earlier. So that's what we did. And then we have another relationship blooming in a town called Otterville. And you talk about small communities. I think they have 35 on the map. But we don't know what that means. We're just going to go. We're going to talk to anybody, any little school, wherever that we can go. And it seems like I've missed somebody, Melissa. Who am I? Oh, Glasgow Public Schools. Sorry. And in Glasgow, Missouri, again, it was a place where we didn't have Head Start till the school came to the table, and then we were able to form relationships with that school by working together. Okay? So this is the Columbia Public Schools, and this is the goddess of early childhood. I asked her, how should I call you? What should I call you today? She said, just the goddess of preschool. I said, okay. Well, I agree with everything you all have said because it is about relationships. And if you don't have really good ones and you're willing to weather storms, because sometimes it got ugly. It really got ugly. We're territorial. We're Head Start. They're territorial. They're the school. And everybody thinks they're the school because they are. And it was just up and down, really interesting. But in the beginning, I want to just share a little statistical type stuff and then, or what years we brought what. We've only been in partnership since '05, and in that year, Mary came to our site, Park Head Start, and they're in Columbia. It's kind of in the middle of what they call Center City. It's in a housing project. And she said, I noticed that you have space over there that you don't seem to be using. And she was needing space for another Title I classroom that had just budgeted. It just grew. They just have lots of kids in Title I. So we thought about that. And did a little digging and learned that the actual property was on land owned by the school. So somebody's going to go out. So we thought, well, that might be good. And also, the interesting thing, the building was built by the housing authority. So we had a housing authority property sitting on public school land, and we were in it. So who's the squatter? So anyway, but I do think that the housing has to be mentioned here too as partner because they brought all the facility upgrades with no cost. They brought the outside play area up to code, no cost. They wanted those kids to have that place to, to go. Now, we had to pay costs on things we wanted above and beyond the call of duty. But anyway, so that first year, 2005-06, it was the space partnership. Later, before the end of that year, actually, Mary came in and she goes, really, why is the early Head Start in that one room in there? Because she wanted to bring another one in. I mean, it was so successful just in space that she thought, okay, I just want to have both. We liked the partnership, and so we moved the babies. We found a space in housing. That's why housing became great.
I was on really good behavior then.
She really was. She was just really tiptoeing. But the housing, without them, we couldn't have done what Mary really wanted to do. Then we added that 4th classroom. And at that point, we started talking about, and Mary may remember this differently than I do, but having classroom together. And in the initial conversations, it was about us providing the social service and things like that and all those comprehensive services. But I'm sitting there going, but we have teachers. And she was going to have teachers. And we were going to have to remove the kids down to 15 in a classroom because that's Title I's requirement. So that was going to reduce our kids that we were serving in each of those classrooms. So anyway, long story short, we had a teacher, they had a teacher, but everything was kind of managed separately for 2 years, seriously separately. She was managing her people, we were managing our people. Try that when you're not agreeing. And then also separate files on kids. No, I mean, everything was duplicate because everybody had to have their stuff for their stuff. So whatever. So that was interesting.
Well, even
Go ahead.
I want to interrupt just
No,
for a minute,
please.
because even at the very beginning, they weren't sharing classroom space. We were just neighbors in the building.
Oh yeah, neighbors.
Neighbors.
Yeah.
So it was like having a drawer, but not really committing. So we were still asking kids to go out of one room, and I think somebody earlier said, go out the front door and come in the back door, and rotate children around before we fully evolved.
Right, because then that, in the evolution, then we did one half the day. The kids stayed because that's better than them going somewhere else. She had a title that first year, they still might have gone on bus. But then we were morning, they were afternoon, or vice versa, and they got the breakfast, lunch, snack, nap. We worked that out with licensing, whatever. But when we both sat down, and Melissa was deeply involved in this too, but to talk about let's co-teach. We're both doing high scope. We're both collecting the same stuff, basically. We serve the special needs children within this system together with the Columbia Public School. What are we doing? So that was an interesting shift, but I think that's when we really became a partnership. I mean, all those other things are really good, but like she said, be in the drawer, just kind of, we're in here, we're going to play nice, we're eggshells, somewhat eggshells sometimes.
Baby steps.
Baby steps. And you have to have a lot of trust on the staff that work with each other day to day. And so they had to learn how to communicate. And do they talk to Lindsay's staff who's in the building, or do they call Mary? I mean, communication structures have to be put together, and I want to really recommend that. And I also recommend that if you're developing a manual for the staff, it has to be theirs. It's not going to be the Head Start manual, because it isn't just Head Start. They're going to have their manual. It's going to have to meet all the things you want it to and all the things they need it to, but that was very important. They have staff meetings together, and that's extremely important, that they're seen as yes, they're Head Start, and yes, they're Title I, but they're different, and different but equal. And this, in 09, Mary had space in a newly developing early childhood center. They converted an old elementary school, Field Elementary, and we had one classroom in there. This last year, the superintendent of schools, the assistant superintendent, and our executive director got together and started looking at the teen population again, the risk factors for why are kids not graduating. A lot of it had to do with pregnancy. So we moved another classroom to her Field Elementary School, not Field, it's Field Early Childhood. And then we have babies in that original building. So we have a lot of things going on in early childhood, infant and toddler preschool. The last thing I'm going to say before you really hear what really goes on, without leadership at the top of your organizations really buying into your crazy ideas, we couldn't do this stuff. Mary has always been supported by the superintendents that she's had and the assistant superintendents in education. Clarence came to the opening of the Park Center. I asked him, you would come out annually and kind of come once a year generally to come see our program, whatever, and I said, could you make it at the time they're going to have this opening? So he spoke on behalf of Head Start, which was awesome. The superintendent was there. And another thing that I think solidified me to how passionate Mary was. I knew how passionate Melissa was and the staff we had, but I didn't know Mary very well. She was in there wanting it to be so good that she was scrubbing the floor one day, and I started feeling guilty because I wasn't scrubbing the floor, so I drug my daughter down there. See how I do it? And I told my daughter she could scrub the floor too. But I did. No, Melissa was in there daily too, but I think it's being willing to go above and beyond a piece of paper that says you've partnered and having everybody sign it. It's really wanting to do the best for kids, and it's really doing whatever it takes, including cleaning the floor, if that's what you have to do so that kids can have the best experience that they can have. I applaud them, Melissa, Beth, all the team that I have. They're awesome. I've just never seen anything like it. So, thank you for that. You want to say
Just
something?
a little bit to add to that. Now we currently co-teach, so it's a Title I teacher and a Head Start teacher, and then we have some floating aides. So the model has changed a little bit, and that seems to be working very well. I wanted to talk a little bit about our screening process, and that is a little different than theirs. The public school screens all of our kids, so they do the dial, the developmental, and then we later do the social emotional. They do hearing and vision and things like that. And so we can identify them as early as, summer. Then when the school year starts, the teachers gather around, and it can be any building can come with kids that they have concerns with, and they're called teacher learning teams. And so once a month they come to field, and they have bring concerns with kids so they can talk about strategies and do early identification through that way. So lots of teachers get together and give strategies. Then the next month they do follow up on that to see if those strategies worked or not. Then if they haven't, that's when they determine if they should go to the parent for their permission to go forward with getting the school involved as far as evaluation and screenings in that. Let's see, what else have I missed?
I think in terms of our collaboration that extends with early childhood special ed, that's been ongoing from the beginning. Head Start had a relationship with early childhood special ed even before we had this collaboration level. As Lindsay was talking, that continues to evolve as well. The teacher learning teams, the BUZZ process, those are all just little acronyms that we use in Columbia. Just to talk about teacher support for general education strategies, and then how to take that the next step when we want to involve for further screening or possibly recommend an evaluation. If a child is eligible for services through early childhood special ed, most of the time that is dealt within the classroom, and early childhood special ed therapists will come in and push in right there on site. We have a great relationship with early childhood special ed and a very fluid relationship. It can happen. In fact, we have a child who's currently at Park who's gone through this process and will be actually transitioned into a self-contained setting for early childhood special ed. But on the flip side, that happened to a child last year, and he's coming back from that self-contained setting. So it's like I said, it's very fluid, and we're always looking at what's best for the child. And it really is a team decision that involves parents and teachers from all the agencies and the therapists, the special education folks. It really is a team decision.
Can I butt in here a minute? I'm really not programmatic at all, but something else I've seen, and I know you both had it. You both had great involvement of families. But this working together, people, is phenomenal with parent engagement. It really is. I mean, you've taken two different sets of people out of the home. You just have one team that deals with the home. But they work together, and sometimes we all know this. Some of us really have a better connection with one parent than we do with another. But every activity, 100-man lunch, whatever you guys are doing, it is completely blown out of the water. They're all there. And so I think that's really important in a really at-risk population to believe that you could engage those families. I know you all do too. But it's just phenomenal. It's really good.
At the earlier breakout session, one of the teams was talking about that they were having difficulty in their partnership with their school people. And it really does boil down to communication. And Lindsay and I have arm wrestled, and I know I could take her. No. And we have arm wrestled, we've had closed door discussions, and we've spent a lot of time with our staff together. And that's the best recommendation ever, especially if you're creating, which I feel like we are creating always, but is to spend time modeling that and demonstrating that with your people. If they see the two of you or your leadership team really modeling that. You know, the folks that recently came to Park Avenue still talk about, I remember when you were in there scrubbing floors. And so I think modeling what it is that you want folks to do is very important. If you want them to believe and to have buy-in, then they couldn't do that if we didn't. And that's we. That's the people in the back, that's the people up here, that's all the people along the way. If we didn't believe that this was what was best for kids, why would anyone else?
Well, you both have given us a lot of things to think about, and I appreciate how you summarized what the key components were as well as the emotional piece. So at this time, we'd like to open it up for any questions from the audience.
I would like to hear the teams talk about, we know in every relationship there are times when it just doesn't work, something falls out, something didn't happen, somebody is upset. So my question would, can you talk a little bit about how you catch that before it gets big and what you do about it?
That's a great one.
It actually happened this year, I have to say.
Okay, good.
Poor Sharon has been so patient with me. We changed our special education paperwork system this year, and while we thought it was up and ready to go when school started, it was not completely. The IEP system was ready to go, but the evaluation system was not. And so we, in fact, right before Christmas, just got it going, and then we were new to it and had not been trained on it, and so it was a nightmare, to say the least. So I had children who didn't have evaluation reports that needed to be done. So we were able to meet with the parents, go through the evaluation information, do the IEP, and explain to the parent that I apologize that you don't have more. I mean, they received a copy of all of the evaluation report or the evaluation information, but it wasn't in a report form like I like to do, and so that it was easier for them to understand. So I did my very best to explain it to them and then get them copies as soon as possible. And so, like I said, Sharon has been very patient with me because she needs that information for her records. And so I, was able to give her what I had and just apologize. But there are definitely things that I think happen all the time, and, and parents, sometime we had a parent this year, she made a referral, and I tried to start the evaluation, and it wasn't going to happen. The parent was going to refuse. I talked with Shelby several times, and Shelby said, I've talked, and Mom's just not ready. And I said, you want me to call? And she said, I really think it would do more harm than good at this point. So Shelby and I just continued to talk about him. I would watch him when I was over there, just kind of give some observations and some strategies that they could try, and continued to try to talk with the parent, and eventually was able to get parent permission. And since then, it's been amazing. I mean, the parent was very involved, and we were able to get that going, and it's been very good. But initially, she had to wait because she had made the referral, and the parent had given the permission for the referral, but then backed out and said, no, I'm not ready for this evaluation thing. So.
I'm sorry.
And the reason we need those, the teacher works off the goals, off the IEP in the classroom. So sometimes it's a really long time getting the IEP, the copy after the IEP meeting. I think it would be very beneficial if these girls could have some help with someone helping type up the IEP once the final version is
well,
there.
and I know different schools do it differently. I always try to type up the evaluation or the IEP to have it there, at least a draft copy of it, so that the parent receives a draft copy and the teacher receives a draft copy, and then we make changes as we need to as we go through the meeting. And so Sharon's talking about that final draft that gets to the teacher, but the teacher does have an idea. We've talked through what goals we're going to hit and how to address those. So at least with me. Now other schools do it differently, and so they may not get those IEPs to them quite as quickly. So.
That's a great example of how communication works. And we always have to remember in collaborations that mistakes are only about feedback. They're not about right and wrong. So good for you guys. How about you guys? You mentioned you had some conflict in the beginning.
Let's talk about recent conflict.
Currently, Actually, if you can believe this, Mary and I haven't had any conflict for a while, so.
For a while.
But one of the ways we meet weekly, so we can talk about any kids that, we're selecting for the program together and see any kind of background and staffing or screening scores, and we could go through that, and anything that has to do with the partnership. So the communication then, there again, is key.
I was going to go back to the beginning. One of the things we did as we were writing the agreement, literally just started with pieces of paper on the wall and put up two things: negotiables, non-negotiables.
Very good.
And then if we were talking about a regulation or something, we had to find it and prove that it really was. It wasn't some idea. I mean, because a lot of times we're holding ourselves back by one little word. We're saying should or whatever it is. And
That is so good. What a great exercise. Because a lot of times our memory is not where it really is. It's been interpreted so many times. So
good chance to educate each other.
yes.
Things like that.
Yes.
I think it really was.
Good for you guys. Okay, anyone else? Are you all ready to start this? Some kind of collaboration? I think one of the things, just to summarize a little bit, that you all have shared that I think is really valuable for all of us to hear is that leadership at the top really needs to be committed. And that makes a huge difference in your ability to get there. I have always found that when you get down to the teacher and the parent and the child, the collaboration is much easier to accomplish because I think we stay very focused on the best interests of the child. But at an administrative level, sometimes we let regulations and standards and those kinds of things inhibit us. So leadership at the top is very important. Bev talked about relationships, and I couldn't agree more. It's a wonderful opportunity to build some very deep relationships with your passion for serving children and families. And then communication, as always, every time I see a breakdown, it's related to communication. With the work I do. So if we can get to what the communication is really trying to say, oftentimes we can get to the same page. Passion, I love the passion we all have for serving children and families. That's just a given. And certainly that helps us through the tough times because we're so committed. I think the ability to take risks and the courage to take risks also is a big element when you come to collaborating with your different partners. Willing to go above and beyond, whether it's scrubbing the floor or going way beyond your job description and the kind of the way things have been done, also create creative possibilities. You talked about the collaboration meetings, which I think are very important. Oftentimes we say, oh, do we have to go to another meeting? Do we really need to schedule another meeting? If you don't, you're invested in the task and not the relationship, and so I think sometimes it breaks down when we don't have those face-to-face meetings. It's also an evolutionary process. I loved what Murnell said when she said, when you just started out by asking. You saw a possibility, and then you asked the question. So that also was very good. Modeling, we talked about modeling, and when we model good partnership, good partnership goes throughout the system. And then the language. I think the language trips us up a lot. We immediately interpret something from our perspective, and until we get on the same page with the language, we can get ourselves into trouble. So you all have done an incredible job of sharing with us just what it takes to make a local collaboration happen, and I thank you all.